Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I thought I'd look at a trade or a trade setup that one of our customers highlighted to us during one of our training webinars yesterday. So this is basically what one of our customers found rather than what we're looking at ourselves. I just thought that would be a good example to show you what kind of things our customers are doing. And this was on the NASDAQ. Now what our customer noticed was as the market rallied to new highs at 10:30, you can see here there's a very wide range bar here. If I go back a bit and actually put the high-low close on for the previous day, you can see that was the high of the previous day, which was the 23rd. Can you see that? If I zoom out or scroll out a bit, that was the high, and that was labeled at 45.75. In that this bar here made a VSA setup. In other words, in our volume, it had a red volume bar. Now this made a very wide range bar on high volume going to new highs above the previous day's high or a prior important pivot. Normally amateur traders would look at that and say yes, that's buying and therefore go long. However, this is what we call a VSA or volume spike analysis setup in MTPredictor. So what do we know? Well, first of all, if we go back to the prior pivot, we can right mouse click and place a DP level on the chart. These are what we call decision point levels, and they are on the chart in advance. So this customer, his name was Greg, so he knows who he is, had that level on, and he knew that if the market rallied up to new highs on a VSA bar like this and then hit our DP resistance level, we then look to the bar afterwards to see whether we get signs of a reversal. And that's exactly what we had. In other words, the 1033 bar, which was this bar, the market gave us a red sell bar. That means that the higher volume on the previous bar was actually not buying, as most amateurs would suspect. It was actually professionals coming in and starting to sell the market. So in other words, we look to then take a trade to the short side. I'll just take our high-low close off because we know about that already. So what would the initial trade setup be? Well, initially it would be just a retracement into the DP support from the last little minor swing into the high. So right mouse click, place a DP off there. Again, remember these these levels are on the chart in advance. Initially then you'd have placed a sell setup one tick below the bar, protective stop one tick above the high, and then your target would have been that level there, so a potential 3-hour profit. Greg actually did something a little bit more intelligent as well. He actually looked at the next bar, which was the 1036 bar, and actually said, well, can't we use that one because it had a better entry? So let's do what he said and go from that to that one. Oops, so I'll just do that again. Risk reward there, there. I'd come down to that level. And as you can see, that increased the potential profit to approximately 4R. I must admit myself, I wasn't too keen on this because normally with VSA setups, because it's the professionals coming in, I normally like to see the market go with us fairly quickly because it's the professionals wanting to move the market. So when it chops sideways like this for a few bars, I must admit I'm not too keen on VSA setups that do that. I normally like to see them go with us, and I mentioned that in our training webinar yesterday. But nevertheless, this was the VSA setup that Greg was looked at. So my advice was, because it was going choppy and sideways, once the market reached the 100% initial risk level, or the trade reached the 100% initial risk level, which we have on our chart there, in the webinar I suggested that he moved his stop to break even, which of course would have protected his trade, and it never came back and never stopped him out. The profit at this particular level would have been a nice 4-hour profit. However, what we're also looking at was on our 15-minute charts. Yesterday we were saying that there was a very large area, or a large potential area where the market could drop to. So I'll just take that level. No, I'll leave that level on because in particular I want to go back to the prior swing into the high and place a DP on from this swing. So this would have been the next major support level. Remember, this would have been on the chart in advance. And actually what I also want to show was this first DP level we had here was also a higher time frame support level off that prior pivot there, which was the same pivot I used on the 3-minute chart. So that would have been 15-minute resistance as well. So what I'm suggesting is that we did not have major support until this 15-minute DP level down here as well. And also I'd like to go to the ES chart, because on the ES chart on the 15-minute chart, just bear with me for a second while this loads. There we go, it's loaded. What we also were looking at yesterday is we were saying there were some very small swings up at the top here, and what we were suggesting is because they're very narrow, this DP here, this 15-minute DP was likely to be breached, and if it was breached there was an awfully long way to go down on the short side. In fact, we had our next DP support zone right the way down here, which was an awfully long way below, and also we cited this gap. If I place a high tag on here, you can see the market made a gap a few days ago, and markets like to close gaps. So what we were also citing was if the market breached this level, then there was likely to be a continued fall, and basically the most obvious move yesterday would have been on the short side. So we also highlighted that. So bear that in mind, that we were suggesting that the ES in particular was likely to have more of a fall or more exposure on the short side yesterday, and our 15-minute DP was still quite a way below the market. Let's see how that could have affected your trade management. Well, the obvious thing to do is, rather than come out at our initial target here, you can see our STF was strong at the time. You could either trailed with your ATR stop, which would have probably stopped you out at basically about the same level, or you could have come down here and actually said, well, I don't want to come out at the first target. I knew that the downside risk was higher, in other words, more likely of declines yesterday, therefore I won't come out until I hit the next 15-minute support zone, which was down here. That would have increased your profit to approximately 7R. So that would have been a very good trade yesterday. But notice how the short setup actually was highlighted off the very bar of the high of the day yesterday. And again, this was found by Greg in our training webinar, so one of our customers actually highlighted this to us as well. So I just want to again stress that picking the highs or lows of the day is possible if you have the correct tools, and I've discussed this quite a few times in recent webinars. So this is a very good trade setup, a VSA trade setup that we teach in our normal training webinars, that nailed basically the high of the day in the NQ yesterday, and I had a potential trade down into the higher time frame support of 7.2R. Remember, we use correct position sizing to keep our initial risk small and under control. So a very, very good trade there by Greg. So very, very well done. Very well done. I also want to highlight another trade, because if I just take this risk reward off here, that you can see we're at 15-minute support here. I just want to drag this across so you can see that. But also what I want to show is that this DP buy setup, again this was a minor VSA bar here as well, came in at our 15-minute support zone. So this would have been an area where more experienced users would want to go long. And if I place the analysis on this particular trade setup, there would have been a nice little move up into the first target there, where a potential 2.5R profit was available. You wouldn't really want to run this because again the downside risk was probably greater yesterday, but that would have been an additional 2.5R profit available yesterday for more experienced users. Add that to the 7R of Greg's trade and you would have had a very, very good trade yesterday. But the main trade setup I want to show was the one highlighted by Greg, where he was basically uncovering this VSA setup that nailed the high of the day yesterday on the NQ, and would have potentially had a very nice decline right down into the 15-minute or higher time frame support zone for a potential 7.2R profit. So hopefully this has been a good example to show you what MTPredictor customers are doing on their own accounts with the MTPredictor software, and to show you how you can use some of the advanced tools in the software to uncover great trades like that. Looking to sell off the very bar of the high of the day yesterday to catch pretty much the biggest decline throughout the whole of the day was a very, very good result there using the MTPredictor software. So again, very good trade there, Greg, and thanks for sharing that with us.